I think what people don't understand is how much of Trump's behavior is on brand, right? So if he slept with your wife, that is completely on his brand.
Yeah, right.
It's built in. That only supports him.
Forget the stump speech, the whistle stops, and the kissing of babies. A candidate gets elected today largely through his or her advertising. On November 3rd, America will go to the voting booths and select the next president of the United States. Tens of millions of dollars will have been spent on selling the candidates to the country. Advertising's outsized role in the packaging of a president is what this podcast is all about. I thought it would be a fun idea to gather some of the creative lions of advertising along with some younger creative directors and political pros to play judge and jury with today's presidential political advertising. I'm Ellis Verde, and this is Selling a President 2020. We're not concerned with right or left, urban or rural, deplorable or elitist. Our attention is on how the candidates are making their pitch to the American public. After all, Election Day is democracy's one-day sale, as we say in advertising. Fear sells, anger motivates. This episode will take a look at how the president's marketing is so on brand, how it has created such an intensely loyal following, and why anger, fear, and rage are so effective in the selling of a president in 2020. Donald Trump is not the first to employ fear-mongering in his appeal to voters, or distort facts to discredit opponents and burnish his own image. But it clearly feels different this time around. This is Season 1, Episode 1, Fear Sells.
It used to be that if you were running negative advertising, you would at least mix in some positive advertising to dull the idea that you were a son of a bitch.
Famed New York Times advertising columnist Stuart Elliott.
Is that out the window now? Because Trump is just always on the attack. He's always angry and he's always attacking. And if there's nothing to attack, he'll make something up.
Yeah, I think that the scary thing for me now is you would count on facts and statistics to sway people's opinions. Obviously, you have to present them in a way that's interesting.
Advertising legend Lee Garfinkel.
But I think 4 years ago, the idea of facts became less relevant, or rational thinking became less relevant. And so there's a big question mark for me right now is, how does any candidate go forward and try to break through and actually change people's opinions, knowing that facts may not be the thing that separates you from the other guy?
It's emotion. The biggest drivers in behavior are anger and fear in political circles.
Chief Creative Officer, BBDO New York, Greg Hahn.
So Trump's whole message is they're going to take something away from you or they're out to get you. And that's just a really powerful emotion. And no matter what facts or policy underline that or counter that, it doesn't matter because he's saying something's going to be taken from me. So he really plays up a driving emotion where, you get some of the other people are more rational and more fact-based. It doesn't matter, like they're not listening.
Yeah, I think that, look, Trump rewrote the rules.
Advertising Hall of Famer and author Linda Kaplan-Thaler.
It didn't really have much to do with his television commercials. It was just that, he was such an outlier. Everybody just counted him.
And he is sort of taken the reality TV platform and politicized it. And we have to factor that in, too. I think some of his advertising moving forward into the general election is going to be just for the hell of it kind of ads that are just going to be designed to make you laugh or make you freak out, make the other guys freak out. And there's going to be a big, that's going to be one of his strategies, I think, that is going to be unusual for political advertising.
I do think in terms of Trump, the humor is less about humor for humor's sake or entertainment for entertainment's sake.
Political consultant Jonathan Prince.
As it is another vehicle for him to tap into the undercurrent of...
Oh, yeah, sure. He's not hiring a comedian to write him polished stand-up lines. He's doing humor within the context of his base and what they find funny
Trump,
and what
Trump
they
is basically
enjoy.
An overlay of some legitimate economic insecurity on top of an enormous amount of horrible racial insecurity, anger, and bitterness. And the humor is for people who are angry and fed up.
There's a victim in his humor. There's an interesting article recently in the Washington Post that talked about the way conservatives and liberals see humor differently. They have different mindsets when it comes to humor. Like they brought up the point, like you never really have seen a successful conservative late night talk show, because that kind of humor is normally based on irony and a certain bit of filling in their own gaps. They don't close the loop. They allow the viewer to sort of fill in the gaps and understand subcontext, whereas conservatives, just general, this is a generalization, and but they're saying their humor is very surface. It's like, it's a form of exaggeration. It's very easily, what you see is what you get. It's just bigger version of that kind of thing.
And what we've seen him accomplish would make any marketer envious. He has created a level of brand loyalty that is truly remarkable. Polarizing, yes, but that doesn't seem to matter. Knowing that half the country would never buy this brand doesn't change the messaging. He isn't fazed by it. He's found that amplifying people's rage and fear is a winning formula. Sacrilegious or not, Trump has positioned himself to be the savior for those he's targeted. And though it might not expand his brand, it's certainly cementing loyalty.
Yeah, even they'll vote against their best interests in policy in some ways because he's enraged them so much. And you're a victim. You're being your way of life is being threatened.
And he's entertained them.
Yeah, and he's good
there's
TV.
that
Yeah.
aspect too. Apparently, there are a number of people that don't particularly like him, or they don't like his tweets, or they don't like how he speaks about women, but they're having a good time.
It's hard to ignore.
I mean, I wrote an editorial back in 2016, and I said, what can I possibly do to convince a Trump supporter not to vote for Trump?
Yeah.
And I realized after a while, I don't think there's anything that I can do. And I asked people who were Trump supporters, if you found out that Donald Trump had sex with your wife, would you still vote for him? And 99% of Trump supporters said, well, she probably had it coming, or he probably, I wasn't paying attention to it, so yeah, it's okay. And I realized, I think targeting Trump supporters is probably a waste of money, and it's talk to the people that either haven't voted or aren't sure.
I think this election is so different because I have a hard time figuring out who's undecided at this point. Like, you've had 3.5 years of Donald Trump. If you don't know if you like him or not, I don't know what's going to convince you. You know where he stands. You know where you know what you're going to get.
Chief Creative Officer Tom Chrisman.
That is the key, is that as much as a lot of people hate himself, he is himself, and he's not going to change, and he's out there being the same character every time.
So, there's this theory about Trump and projection, that everything Trump says, it's basically projecting back onto people what they've said about him.
I think what people don't understand is how much of Trump's behavior is on brand, right? So if he slept with your wife, that is completely on his brand. It's built in. That only supports him. It's only what you expect from it.
I mean, you talk to people who are Trump supporters, there's absolutely nothing that man can say that they don't back him on. Yeah. They come up with all sorts of reasons. Well, I don't look at the tweets. And I do think he does have a visionary thing, which is it's me, and I'm the one. I'm the Messiah.
Only I can fix it.
Only I can fix it.
Right.
The people who voted for him, they know he's arrogant, and that's what they like.
They will point at that and they will say, Kennedy, philanderer, mobbed up. Oh, Johnson, Vietnam War, liar, like all these things. And they will just, because that is what has happened.
I think people vote based on who they identify with and who they feel is right for them, even if all the issues aren't there. If it's usually one driving issue or personality.
And I think what's scary is that almost every late night comedian does anti-Trump jokes, and it makes absolutely no impact on the Trump supporter. So they're making the jokes to the people that are already anti-Trump, people.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do we start, if we want to get someone else in office, how do we start to convince people to think differently? And my concern is, from most of the advertising that I've looked at from the Democrats, except for maybe Bloomberg, is it all feels like techniques and styles that were done in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if you can't keep doing it the same way and expect a different outcome.
But can someone who relishes the role of showing his base that arrogance pays, and that tact and decorum can go to hell because, damn it, he's fighting for them, ever need to soften his message? After all, he fell short by more than 3 million votes in the last election.
It's against any Democrat.
The advertising that he's done, I have to say, is pretty good. because all it is a lot of people cheering and just, best economy in 50 years.
It's Morning in America revisited.
Right,
For those who
exactly.
remember the famous Reagan re-election campaign.
But the thing is, the ads are doing totally different pieces of work. The Trump ad is not designed to persuade anybody.
Right.
The Trump ad is simply designed to flex in front of an audience of supporters that wants him to flex.
I think if Trump can just even the field, then he's happy. If he can just kind of
Take
make
that
it like,
away
well,
as an
I'm
issue.
in. Yes, just take it away by adding his own commercial. I think that's.
An incumbent might have a little more freedom to do more softer
Of course.
kind of work. And so Trump might have that luxury now to go because, with a few facts, you think that he's a genius, but you don't need much. And if you're out there and you kind of have a feeling and everybody else is fighting for you doing the wrong thing, you're doing the wrong thing.
Right, but Trump has changed the landscape too. You can't have a message of hope against a Trump because it will not be perceived marketing-wise as powerful enough to address the issue.
Yeah, and I also think probably if somebody attacks him, that's the end of it. He's going to attack back. So he'll take his nice ads right off and go right after that person back at him.
If you went after him as he's actually not a winner, he's actually a loser. The only time I saw his numbers dip in 2016 was when he lost one of the primaries. And suddenly people started looking at him differently. This guy's not really. And then, he quickly recovered from that somehow. But I would position him as not the guy he really thinks he is. That's why I think Bloomberg did so well when he's like, you have no money. He's the one person that can say, I'll buy you out tonight if you want me to, So if you expose him for what he is, I think you could take him.
The Republicans, I think, always have an advantage because they say less and they show more emotional side. And so the Democrats are struggling with how to better position the logic. And
But I also think the Republicans are better. I once saw and maybe you did it. It was in the Times. They compared the signage and fonts of the Democrats versus the Republicans.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And it was interesting because, they say Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line. And, they get the same words. When I worked with Clinton, it was with James Carville. And he was the master at, okay, blah, 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 here's the soundbite. And everybody's going to use the soundbite. And you don't see enough Democrats doing that. Republicans do whatever they say. It's a hoax.
Well, one thing we've learned from today's discussion is that the Trump marketing phenomena is definitely not a hoax. Love it or loathe it, it's proven surprisingly effective in driving his voters to the polls. In the coming weeks, it will be fascinating to see how Trump, as one of today's guests, Jonathan Prince, put it, flexes in his ads, and what Bernie and Biden will have to do to combat each other and the marketing phenomena that is Donald Trump. I want to thank everyone who helped kick off this series today. Hope you can join us for the next episode when we take a look at how the election has upended the traditional media landscape and what the candidates have been doing to package themselves to the American electorate. I'm Ellis Verde, and this is Selling a President 2020. Thank you for listening.